All right, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. For tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, folks, it is Friday. That means we're back for another Dad Talk. This is where we step away from the politics and we talk just kind of casually, kind of chill, kind of end the week and say like, all right, let's not fight about politics and Republicans and Democrats and yes, even the libertarians out there. We're busy fighting amongst ourselves. So we don't really have time to fight with the Republicans and Democrats. But anyway, we step away from that. And I like to have a conversation either with dads or just something that's on my mind about being a man, a father, a husband, whatnot. Before we get into the show, though, I want you to remember this show does not run on freedom fumes. Okay, so if you're watching me on Rumble, smash that green $ during the show to drop a Rumble rant. It's kind of like tossing me a cold one, 7:30 in the morning. It keeps the vibes high and the mic's on. And if you really want to go all in, go ahead and click the subscribe for just $5 a month. Your support helps me fight the good fight and grow this channel. All right, let's get into this. Man, I got some new subscribers. And, it's been a while since I've addressed new subscribers to this channel. And so I figured, you know what? How about a quickie? So Liberty Dad, some of you already know this, so bear with me if you're already familiar. But for those that are new to the channel, Liberty Dad is my attempt to blend the discussion of liberty with the best persona of what you might think of as a great dad. My saw blade logo, it has a tie in the center, with the tie in the center. It's designed to represent both the white collar dad, which conveniently I have a white collar shirt on, and also the blue collar dad. This is because I enjoy woodworking. I love going out and working in my yard, so I enjoy those things, even though I don't get to do enough woodworking as I would like. But I also work from home, doing corporate America stuff. That means spreadsheets. Lots and lots of spreadsheets. Anyway, my goal is to demonstrate to you that you can actually learn quite a bit on most any topic if you're simply willing to put in the effort. And if you add a little critical thinking, well, then we can find the best position on any topic, event, or even argument. And to that end, what I try that the structure of this show is on Monday, I do my bill review. That's where I review some sort of legislation, an executive order, what have you. Something official from the government at the local, state, or national level. It doesn't matter where it is. If I get wind of something, I might do a local thing going on here in Jacksonville, or I might find some local bill, some new ordinance in another state, another city, and I might just read through that and then give you my lay perspective on it because I'm not a lawyer. Wednesdays, I like to do my POTUS Weekly. That's where I talk about his hits and misses. And we're objective here. If the president does something that I agree with, then I say so. And if it's something that I disagree with, which tends to be the case, well, then I say so as well. Then we have Fridays, like I said, it's Dad Talk, where I get away from the politics and I have a conversation with the dad about what's important to him. Or when I don't have a dad lined up, then I just talk about something dad related, as I will do today here in just a few moments. That leaves Tuesday and Thursday as kind of like wild card days. Maybe it'll be a topic, where I do one topic for the show. Maybe it's, maybe I read another bill. Maybe I read about a study and I tell you about a study, right? Maybe whatever. Sometimes I'll do multiple things. I like to do my dad musings where it's like, all right, I don't have one particular topic that I'm ready to talk about. So I'll talk about maybe 3 or 4. My goal is explicitly not to be an expert on any given topic, but rather to demonstrate that we can all be quite intellectual on a wide array of topics. You can think of it like, you've heard of jack of all trades, master of none. Well, on this show, think of it more like explorer of many ideas, master of none, right? But just because we're exploring the ideas doesn't mean that we can't be intellectual and intelligent about it. And truthfully, I think that's most people. So where I hope this channel stands out is the quality of my arguments and, what I, in the thoughts that I have backed up by broad and robust sources. If you go back, you'll find some episodes of mine have many citations, and the sources don't seem to have any particular leaning. And that's, again, on purpose, because what I'm trying to do is just be curious about the world. I have my views. We all do. We all have our biases. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I don't try to be curious about the world, learn about it, and then evaluate some of my own ideas. I think that's what makes the world a better place because it leads us to the best conclusions and it keeps us curious. We should always, I'm 47. There's no reason not to be curious at 47. And in 10 years, there will be no reason for me not to be curious about the world and evaluate even my own ideas, my own thoughts, words, and feelings. So with that, let me shift to a brief reflection on last night's show with Carlin Borsenko. So I see in the chat that my VA lady, or no, I'm sorry, that Liberty lady, she says, great guest on last night. I followed her on Twitter and her YouTube. The chat was very respectful, minus a few bad apples. You always have a couple people being ornery. That's okay. Can't wait for Liberty Dad to have that kind of chat one day. We're going to talk about that kind of chat because that chat was intense. If you were on, you won't see it right now. If you go to the show, you're going to look and you're going to be like, you got like 10, 15 comments. I think it's what, I didn't count. But you got a handful of comments. That's no big deal. The live chat, though, was off the hook. So let me start by saying this. Carlin is a friend of mine. I met her back in 2021. And because I know her, I initially was pretty at ease with having her on as a guest. I was like, hey, you know what? You've been hitting the big time lately. You've been getting on some major shows, and you know what? I'd love to have you on mine. Like just seemed like a good time to do it. And I've had many other guests on. So, and I've interviewed them. somewhere around like 20 to 25 in 2022 alone, I interviewed a bunch of candidates for public office. So no big deal, right? Like you just got to bring somebody on, you can interview them, ask them some questions like they're the expert. I'm not trying to be the expert. That's what I just said a few moments ago, right? Well, I thought so too. I thought they would be no big deal. And then as the show started, I saw this virtual waterfall of words tumbling down the screen, a seemingly chaotic symphony of comments with the scroll bar getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I was like, what? That's a lot of comments. And you might think, oh, that's cool. And it was cool, don't get me wrong. But it was at that moment that I actually found myself quite nervous. I I can't remember the last time that I was actually nervous on my own show. Like, that's crazy. Now, my show is small right now, and generally keeping up with the comments is relatively easy, right? There's not hundreds of comments in there, so I can look over at any given time and I can see, oh, there's a couple comments in there, and I might see one and say, I'm gonna kind of make a mental note. I'm gonna come back to that one. But last night there was no such thing as doing that. It just, nope, no way, no way in the world. And some days, even on the days where my own audience is chatty, yeah, it becomes a little bit harder. But it's still, I can still manage it. And because it's my audience, I feel like if I make a mistake, it's not going to be that bad because like my audience knows me. They know that I fumble and make mistakes, and that's okay. But this is somebody else's audience. So my first thought was like, oh my God, I'll never keep up with this. Like, how the heck am I going to go through these? That was my. I was like, I don't even know how this is gonna, you know. And then it really hit. Like, if you thought I was nervous at that moment, then it really hit because then I was like, wait a minute, what if all of my questions are like dumb or uninteresting, or they've been asked like 1,000 times? And I'm sure I had a few other thoughts going through my mind. Like I was prepared. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I was doubting my preparedness. And I was just like, like, what if these are not good questions? What if I stumble in asking the question and I look like a bum, like some dude that doesn't know what he's talking about? And not to say that I knew her material, just saying like, as an interviewer, you should be prepared to interview the person that you're talking to. You should know a little bit about them. You should know a little bit about the topic. That way you could ask useful questions. That way people watching the show could be like, wow, that's a really great question. I'm glad he asked that. I didn't think of that. That's literally my job. So now I'm like really nervous because, again, I'm fully prepared, but I'm doubting my own preparedness. And I got nervous in a way that I haven't in quite some time. So you might be asking yourself, like, DL, how did you handle this? What'd you do? Well, here's the thing. I'm in the middle of the show. The show must go on. So what I did is I took a few breaths, and I'm not joking. I'm not like, it's not one of these things where you're like, yeah, so I did this and this and this, and then you really didn't do that. No, I actually I mean, quietly, and I mean, in a way that hopefully nobody even noticed, but I took a few breaths and I reminded myself to stay calm and not speak too fast. This is a time where if you know how you behave when you're nervous in a particular situation, then those are the things that you focus on. You say, all right, look, I know that I'm going to get nervous. I know that I'm going to start talking too fast, blah, 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 and when I talk too fast, I might say something dumb or whatever. This is where I need to say, okay, DL, slow down, take a breath. It'll be okay. And then the other thing that I did was to make sure that I did not lose my focus on the conversation with Carlin. In other words, I basically ignored the chat. I mean, I could see it. And the way that things are set up, when I have a guest on, the setup here on my screens is different than when I'm doing a solo show. Like right now, my comments are over here to the right of me. I can look over, just take a quick glance, and I can see the comments and I can scan them. Okay? When I have a guest on, because I'm using the browser and everything, I actually need it in front of me over on the screen that way, which is where all the comments are, which makes it a little easier to not focus on them. because I can't, it's like a little small box to the side with the window showing me and my guest, Carlin, last night. So I could kind of read them if I kind of squinted a little bit, but I really can't read. It's not like here where I can just look over, glance, and see a few things. It was actually more difficult, which made it easier to focus on my guest. And so I basically ignored the chat because um, ultimately, what you want to make sure that you don't do is get focused on the comments and forget your guest. And here's the thing, like right now, I've got my notes in front of me of things that I kind of want to say and that I want to remember. Let's say I go on a tangent or I get distracted by a comment. Like, that's cool. Like, no big deal on a solo show, right? Because I've got my notes in front of me. And so I can just go right back to where I was in my notes. And I can go, oh, I was right there. No big deal. I don't say that, but this is what happens. But if you have a guest on, guess what? There aren't any notes. I mean, I have notes, like my questions, but there aren't notes of what they're saying. So there's no going back. And the worst thing that I could possibly do is ask Carlin a question, or any guest for that matter, get distracted by a comment, and then go, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I was busy looking at what somebody else was saying. That's basically like sitting in a coffee shop with somebody, they're talking to you, and then you like look over and you're like watching somebody else for a second, and then you're like, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I wasn't listening. Right? So I made sure, like, focus on your guest, because at the end of the day, I don't have the audience on as a guest. I have my guest on. That's who's important. So I focused on them. And I'm telling you this because, I want you to learn from my experiences. And I heard something interesting the other day. I was listening to a podcast, to Dave Smith's podcast, and he was saying something. He said, when you're a podcaster, he said a lot of people over time will say, yeah, I feel like I know you. And he said, to a degree, that's true, because as a podcaster, you're basically spending all this time talking about your perspective, your view on whatever it is that you're talking about. So, and for some, they focus on a very narrow topic. And for others, they talk about, like me, they talk about a lot of things. And so over time, you're going to get to know me. And part of what I want you to get to know is I'm just a regular, everyday, average guy. Yeah, I podcast. Yes, I like public speaking, which is a bit of an anomaly. Yes, I'm a bit of a blowhard, right? We all are. Anybody that puts themselves out there like this is a bit of a blowhard. That's who we are. Don't let them try to fool you, okay? We have to know who we are. We know thyself, okay? But I'm telling you this one so we can, grow together in a sense, but also you can learn from my experiences. Because even though you may not want to become a podcaster, maybe you don't want to become a public speaker, you perhaps might one day have a job interview. What do you do when you get nervous? Or maybe you're asked to speak a few words at your friend's wedding, right? You maybe don't want to be a public speaker, but if your friend is, your best friend getting married, and then they're like, hey, can you say a few words? You might be like, oh my God, I don't do public speaking. So I think these kind of conversations, hopefully will go toward whatever experiences that you come across that you have to deal with this nervousness. And the key is it's really simple, super simple. I mean, it doesn't feel that way, but it's at times, but it really is simple. Prepare and focus. That's it. Just prepare and focus. And then when you're there, you need to set your mind to worry about everything else later, right? So like, yeah, I ignored the chat last night because I was like, all right, it's just flying. It's like, and so like, okay, we're going to worry about that later. I don't know what they're saying. I don't know if they're criticizing me. I don't know if they're praising me. And it's not that I need praise, although as a blowhard, we kind of like that. But, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if they're just having conversations between themselves. I don't know. It typically tends to be a little bit of all of the above, right? But I just didn't worry about it because I got to focus on my guest. If you are in an interview, you need to focus on your interviewer, or if you're the interviewer, the interviewee. That's what you need to focus on. What are they saying? That's it. Don't worry about anything else. Okay. And the thing is, once whatever is happening gets started, it's too late to do anything but keep going forward. Right? Like once I saw those comments and I got nervous and I got a little butterfly in my stomach and I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of people in there. What if I'm not prepared? What if, right? Like all these what ifs. And then, so, I'm asking myself all these questions. I'm like, no, 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 back up, back up. It's too late. Show started. You have a focus. That focus is your guest. If you're in an interview, the focus is, which side of the interview you're on. Your focus is the other person. If you are, say, giving a speech at a wedding, your focus is, all right, I am talking about this person, right? That's it. And you don't have to, and you, if you're prepared, then you just focus is, I'm going to say what I'm going to say, whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, right? Or whatever. That's it. Just focus on that. And don't worry. They say if you're playing the piano and you're doing a performance and you make a mistake, you're supposed to just keep going because most people aren't going to notice. Now, there might be one or two people that are very astute, and those people might notice, but they're probably not going to care. And if they do, well, there's only a handful of them. It's not the whole audience. Likewise, I doubt anybody in the audience, especially since this audience was relatively new to me, they're not familiar with how I deliver and all that. I doubt that any of them noticed that I was nervous at any point. And after a while you get good at just kind of quickly reassessing and getting yourself kind of straightened out. But I did take a couple breaths. I was like, and I mean, I wasn't like, it wasn't really dramatic. I wasn't like, goose fraba. It wasn't all that. It was just take a couple breaths, remind yourself, hey, I know that when I get nervous, I tend to speak faster than I normally would, like too fast. Because I'm like, and I remember doing that in speeches early on when I was younger and I would start giving speeches. I would prepare like this 2-minute speech. I'd practice in front of the mirror. It would be 2 minutes. And then I'd get out and I'd deliver it in like a minute or a minute and a half. And I was like, what the heck happened? Like that was literally a 2-minute speech. And what happened was I spoke too fast. That's so you have to know yourself. And that's one of the things that we try to talk about here on the show when we're not talking politics. Like, hey, know thyself, know who you are so that you can be the best you that you can be. That's really the whole goal. But last night it was fun, and you may not feel this way, but I do. That nervousness, that's my thrill seeking. You've got these people, they'll go like do base jumping, or the guys that, drink tons of Red Bull. They'll go do all kind of crazy things, which I would not do, and they do it for the thrill. That's kind of me. I enjoy that. So even though I was nervous, because I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to embarrass my friend, I don't want to embarrass myself, I don't want to waste people's time, so even though there was a certain level of nervousness, it was an enjoyable nervousness. Now, if that's not you, that's cool. I get it. Not everybody's built to be a public speaker. Not everybody's built to go and do, go base jumping or do some sort of extreme sport, that thrills an audience. Not everybody is built for everything. Find what you're built for and then seek to do your best. And don't worry about everybody else, because I promise you, number one, there's a couple things, just real quickly. Promise you this. For starters, you're going to be way more worried about your performance than most everybody else, in most cases. Now, if your performance is really, really bad, then yeah, you might get a lot of flack for it. Like if I was a pianist and I'm playing at Carnegie, and there's like a huge audience there. Well, they're expecting a quality pianist. So if you just fumble and you just bang on the keys all over the place like a little child, yeah, that's going to be bad, right? If you really, really fumble, then yeah, that's going to be bad. But in most cases, here's the catch. In most cases, you are right where you need to be when you need to be there. Here's what somebody told me when I was giving some tech talks here in Jacksonville. I don't know, 2016, 2015, somewhere around there. I wanted to give some tech talks, but the thing was, as a developer as a web developer at the time, I would listen to other guys' talks, and I'm like, dude, these guys are like, their knowledge is off the chain. They know a lot. What am I going to talk about that that's not going to waste their time? And here's what someone told me. This guy, he said, DL, if somebody has invited you to come and speak, he said, that person believes that you have something worth hearing. That's all you need to worry about. And I was like, oh, that really changed my perspective. I was like, wow, the organizer thought I was good enough to come and speak. So if they thought I was good enough to speak, then that's the confidence that I need to go and be somebody that has something worth hearing. And here's what I found out. I was approached more than once from guys that were way smarter than me, way more knowledgeable than me. And they're like, man, that was a good talk. That was an interesting insight that you had. Did I teach them all kind of great things? No. Did I occasionally give them a little nugget that they thought was interesting? I sure did. That's what happens. Confidence, right? So just remember, be confident. If somebody's asked you to speak, or if you get an opportunity to speak, somebody believes in you. So you should too. All right, let's check out some comments here real quick, and then we're gonna get back after an intermission here, and we're gonna get into what this show is about today. We're gonna get into some dad talk stuff. So let's see. Let's take a look here. What y'all are saying. Oops, that was the wrong one, but that's okay. Morning, Liberty Champions, from that Liberty lady, and this is the one I meant to click on, the one right below it. Jennifer Adamson says, good morning. Good morning to you, Jennifer. Thank you for joining. Yes, the watch hours are cray-cray on yesterday's episode. Last night's episode is now my top episode ever. It was that way before I went to sleep. It was the top episode. Like some 2,200 watch hours or views or something like that. I don't remember. It's not watch hours. It's like 2,200 views. And then I think it's like some 600 watch hours or something. Absolutely blew everything else out of the water. So yeah, it was pretty fun. Let's see. Oh, that's cool. So yeah, and I did skim through some of the chat. That Liberty lady who was in the chat said everybody in the chat seemed to like your questions. And here's the thing about the questions that I asked. What I try to do is I just try to think of a bunch of questions of things that I thought would be interesting that people might want to know. And then all I did was organize them in a way so that there was like this fluid, okay, this question makes sense if it's asked after this question, which is, asked before this question, right? And they kind of lead into one another. It's really all I did. And then the only thing that I do, so here's a helpful tip for folks. If you're ever conducting an interview, write down more questions than you think you'll need. Just as many as you can think of, order them in a good order, because there's a good chance that when you're talking to somebody and you ask them you ask them your first question and you're ready for the second one, well, their response, if you're paying attention, which you should be, their response could lead you to think of a new question. And so then you ask that follow-up question. And so then, and then sometimes that question could be, it takes up more time. So now you maybe don't need another question somewhere else. Or sometimes it answers a later question. And then you just like, oh, I don't have to ask that question now. So that's my pro tip for you. If you're ever interviewing, prepare more questions than you think you're going to need, and you'll be all right. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. When Larry Sharp has a guest on and the chat gets bigger because of their followers, Larry Sharp will only read super chats and Rumble rants. That's a good pro tip for me as I grow this channel. So I'll try to keep that in mind. Let's see what else. Okay. So Ladybug Baldiga. I think it's Baldiga. Sound too low. I'll turn it up a little bit. I think could do that. Let's see here. Other folks, let me know. Normally my settings stay the same, so hopefully it's not any different. But I appreciate you letting me know. And hopefully, I did increase the mic volume a little bit, so hopefully that works. And I'll make sure to. Oh, okay. So it looks like that Liberty Lady says, I noticed that too. He'll look at the chat eventually and turn it up. So I did. Yes, I would send him a text message, but he doesn't read a text when he's live streaming. He'll get too distracted. Yes, if I have to look, my phone is constantly buzz, 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 buzz. So if I start looking at that, I'll be like, oh, somebody sent me a DM. And then, like, you guys will be sitting there like, why is this fool looking at his phone? Right? Like, so no, I don't do that. Okay, but I will throw it in the chat. Somebody that's watching the show on a regular basis. Is this typical? Like, is the volume typically at the level you're hearing it now, or is it just today? Because if it's typical, then that means I need to up the volume and keep it up, and I will do that. So just let me know. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see. Yes, test for sound every morning. It is very important. I agree. When I'm using StreamYard, testing the volume is a little bit easier. It's much more difficult to do it through the way that Rumble does it through this particular medium. But I will, this, since we're having this conversation, it's a good reminder, and it's the weekend, so I'll have time to do it. I'll look in and see if there's a setting that maybe I'm missing that I can double check. I don't want to try to get into the technicals of it because I probably will just make it more confusing. But just know that some of the ways for me to evaluate my sound, I can look at my equipment here, and the sound from here looks like it's up at a decent level. But then when it comes to the audio here, that's a little different. So. But I will put a little bit more effort into that since several people are noticing this. So let's see what else we got here. Yes. That Liberty Lady keeps a boot on my neck. Very much so. Okay, so at least one person is saying it's better now. Okay, so that's good. All right, so maybe that's what it is. Let's see, about right, but on the low side. Okay. So Keith also says it's about right, but on the low side. Okay, so let me do this. Let me just increase it here. And you let me know if the audio now going forward is better. And then I'll try to make sure that I keep my mouth as close to the microphone as possible. So we'll do that. All right, so I think we're good with the chat there. Thank you guys so much for all that feedback. These are the kind of things that are helpful in getting this show to be the best libertarian show, because that is my goal. So feel free at any time to drop something in the chat and just be like, hey, here's an improvement that I would really like to see. And the nicer you are about it, the more likely I'll consider it. Like, if you're just a jerk about it, then I might be like, whatever. All right, anyway, let's go to intermission, then we'll come back, and we're going to talk about some dad stuff, or some husband stuff, actually.
Make no mistake, man. Every day you're in a battle for your health, a battle for your family, a battle for your very soul. Make no mistake, man. Every day you're in a battle for your health, a battle for your family, a battle for your very soul. There are forces, seen and unseen, that want you to fail. They're counting on you to fail. Some of these are within your own mind, reminding you of your past failures, telling you, hey, stay in the comfort of your warm bed instead of waking up, doing something difficult, and accelerating with other men who support you and require your support in return. This is F3. There are no lone wolves. We're a pack of men with a shared vision to plant, grow, and serve for the invigoration of male leadership in our community. We are F3. Are you ready?
All right, we're back. Today must be Sound Audio Discombobulation Day. So I will do my best. One of the things that I try to do. Wow, that seems. Let me adjust this here a little bit. All right. Okay. I feel like. Give me a second here. I made some changes, and now I feel like I'm hearing an echo in my ear. I might have to do some work on that. Okay, we'll get past that. Let me. How about that? Okay. All right. So I will. I guess I got a little work to do. I have some homework for the weekend. F3, by the way, I just want to point out, it is a great organization. It is men. It is designed for men, and this show is, Liberty Dad. So apologies to all the ladies out there. But F3, if you're a man or if you have a man, I encourage you I encourage you as a man to go and find your local F3. If you're a woman and you have a man in your life, I encourage you to encourage him to go to F3. It's a great organization. All it is men that get together and exercise at some interval. Like, I think the different groups have different schedules that they keep. There's one that's in my neighborhood on Saturday mornings. I miss it most of the time, but I'm going to be putting some effort into getting my butt up in the morning on Saturday to go because I think it's good. They do have a bit of a religious flavor to them, but you don't have to be religious to attend. That's just the design of this group. But it is a great way to go and kickstart your morning or your afternoon. I guess you wouldn't really kickstart the afternoon, but a good way to kickstart yourself and get some exercise with some fellow men. So I encourage you guys to go and check it out. I went to it a few times and I was like, man, this is a really cool group. Like, just men that get together. Now, I will say this, their exercise is a bit on the tough side. So, but they don't force you to try to keep up. They're very careful to say, like, look, if you're struggling, do your best. Don't hurt yourself. Okay? So if you're very athletic, it's a great place because you can still challenge yourself. If you're not very athletic, if you're a couch potato, that's cool. They go there, do your best. They will support you. So always improve yourself. All right, let's get into this second half here. So I've got this image that I'm going to put up on the screen here. And so here it is. So this comes from Reddit. Anything that comes from Reddit is already oh boy. But this comes from Reddit called Dead Bedrooms. There is literally a subreddit for dead bedroom. This is a problem. Like, we talk about this issue of, oh no, the child birth rate is down, right? And I don't want to get into the politics of that. But there's a whole subreddit to dead bedrooms. I've never been there. I don't know what they talk about. I don't know if there's any good advice. But I'm just going to read you this and give you some of my thoughts on this. So let me go ahead and read this first portion here. I, 34, HL, somebody throw in the comment what HL means and LL. I don't know what those mean. Have been cheating on my wife, 35, LL, for the last 3 years. I'm not going to tell you people to cheat, but just share my experience. Okay. If you're cheating and you're telling people about it, and you're not saying I was a terrible, awful person, you're basically encouraging it. Okay? Can we just be honest here? Let's have some honest conversations. All right, he says, intimacy was good at the beginning of the marriage and decreased more every year. After the birth of our daughter, it became non-existent. This is not uncommon. Not necessarily a good thing, but not necessarily uncommon. I do not remember how many discussions I had about it with her, but she dismissed my pleadings. Before I started cheating, we were having pity sex every 3 months, maybe. Okay? Then he goes on, get to the next portion here. He goes on and he says, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah. I started cheating during business trips. Then it escalated to casual hookups. That's the only reason I can continue with the marriage. Wow. I used to be irritated all the time and it affected the family. Now I'm a better dad. We're going to address that. No unnecessary arguments. I stopped asking for intimacy. She was happy at first, but I see that she is very nervous around me now. She even started initiating it. I would have probably left if we did not have a child, but it came to this point, unfortunately. Okay, let me first give you my disclaimer here. Like I said in episode 566, which was Do Men Need Sex? Yes, that and more. This is not marriage advice. So if you are in a situation like this, you need to seek out professional guidance that can help you based on your circumstances. What we're reading here is one side of the story. I do not know her side. I'm not suggesting in any way that this is justified or not necessarily justified. I'm not saying either one because I don't know. I've got one side of the story here. I've got his side. I don't know if, there could be many things that were going on. He might have been watching some adult films and then decided that he wants to try all these quote unquote cool things that he's seen and the wife wasn't interested, right? I don't know what's going on, right? There's any number of things going on. Maybe the wife is dealing with something. Maybe she has a medical issue. I don't know. So I'm not going to try and repair somebody's marriage here. But I am going to talk about things as a husband, as a father, as a man here, okay? But I just want to give that quick disclaimer, that I'm only giving you my thoughts based on what I can read and the face value of that and that alone, okay? So first and foremost, when you're cheating, it is always on purpose. Every once in a while, I'll see like a comment and it'll be like, could you forgive somebody who accidentally cheated on you? Like, there is no such thing. It's always on purpose. And it seems here that he's at least kind of, indirectly acknowledging that he's done this on purpose, right? So this is not like, oh man, it was an accident. I slipped and fell and into my car and drove it over to her house and continued slipping right into her bedroom, right? Like, it's not like that kind of a situation. So I think we should always just, like, that's the number one. It's always on purpose. There's no mistakes. You didn't accidentally do that. And so, like, that just needs to be the number one. Number two, my opinion, it's never excused. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. They may say, well, what if they're okay with it? Okay, if in that particular case, if you have an open marriage, which is not my thing and I actually disagree with, but let's say you have an open marriage, then that person has consented to your behavior. Okay, so that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, that's a different conversation. If this person hasn't consented and said, yes, you go right ahead and sleep around, then you are cheating, period. And cheating is not to be excused, and it is always a purposeful act. So let's talk about a couple things that I thought were kind of interesting here. He said, I used to be, and it was actually, is it in this one? Yeah, it was in the first one. So let's go back to that first one here real quick. So he says, I used to be irritated all the time. Is that? Oh, no, maybe it was the last one. Maybe I had it wrong. Sorry. It was a long one. Oh, there it is. Yeah, like third sentence in. I used to be irritated all the time. Okay, look, men, we like to be objective and honest on this show. I totally get it, right? I get it. Now, I don't want to divulge too much of the privacy of my own marriage, okay? But I've noticed that my mood can drop if I feel like it's been too long. And I say I feel like it's been too long. Like, there was a Facebook reel I saw a long time ago. I wish I'd saved it. I'd play it right now if I could. But it's one of those like little skits that a husband and wife do. And the guy was, acting as if it had been like 6 months. He's like, man, it's been so long. He's like, and then the wife's like, it's been like 3 days, And so I totally get it, man. I get this, right? Like, yes, you can be very irritable if you're not getting some. But here's the thing. You are responsible for your mood, and you don't get to blame it on other people or undesirable circumstances. That is no different than if I'm, like, let's say I have an office job and I go to the office and I have a rough day. The boss is on me. They're like, you need to get these TPS reports in. And I'm like, oh, I'm so busy right now. And then he's like, you need to stay late if you have to get those TPS reports in. And then I stay late. Now I'm grumpy, right? I come home. Okay, that's a circumstance that I had to deal with. Now I'm at home. I don't get to be, oh, well, I'm just irritated in a bad mood. Everybody walk on eggshells around me. That is not being a proper man. That is not being a proper husband. That is not being a proper father. You have to figure it out. And from my perspective, that's part of being a man. Like, just plain and simple. So you will face, if you're a young man, let me tell you, you will face circumstances of all kinds that are going to stress you out, right? Maybe you're married, The wife's not giving you much, right? That's a circumstance that you have to deal with. You're going to be moody over that. Maybe your boss has been giving you a little bit of hell. Maybe he made you work late. Maybe you don't work in an office. Maybe you work in a factory, and and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna have to put in some overtime tonight because we got some orders, or you need to come in on Saturday." Right? Okay, you have to deal with that, and those around you are depending on you not to be a jerk or not to allow your emotions to get ahead of you and impact them negatively just because something else is being a stressor. Life is full of stress. So you have to figure out how to deal with it. And there is many ways that you can do with it. Yeah, there's many ways you can deal with it. So one way, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples of ways that men can kind of decompress, right? So that you understand how this works. Because I don't want to just tell you, I'm not going to tell you just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Like that, that's not the attitude that we do here. Okay. So maybe you come home and you've probably heard this and maybe you've seen it on the internet a time or two. Men will sometimes pull into their car, They'll pull into their driveway, turn off the car, and they'll sit there for like 5 or 10 minutes. And they're just decompressing, right? The point of that is supposed to be so that when you walk through that door and your wife or your children bombard you with their day, because they haven't seen you all day, right? You're ready for it. You're like, all right, I left work. In the same way that when I go to work, I don't bring my family troubles to work. I don't bring my work troubles to my family, right? I mean, I might talk about them, but I don't impose upon them my negative feelings in a negative way. Like I might talk about it. My son is 6. So I don't really talk about, my frustrations at work so much, but my wife, I might say, man, I was in a meeting today and this person just wasn't getting it and they were making me so angry. And then they said this and then they said that. And so I might blow off a little steam with my wife, right? And she might do the same thing with me. And that's okay. But if I'm angry about what happened in a meeting, I can't just come home and get snippy with her and just be like, because that's not going to be good for our relationship. And when you understand that, I think number one, that goes toward making a better relationship overall, right? Because from my observation, okay, I'm not a counselor, but just from my general observation, if you're not getting what you need out of a relationship, and it can go from many things, like maybe it's sexy time, maybe it's, just time alone, sitting and talking, maybe it's a hug, whatever. That doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter if you're a man or woman. In many cases, not all, not most necessarily, but in many cases, it takes two to tango, right? There is a contributing factor. And this is not putting the blame on the man and saying, if your wife isn't, spending enough time in the bedroom with you, it's all your fault. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we are complex creatures. And things have lead ups. And it's kind of like when I say you don't own your reputation, but you have the power to shape it. It's kind of a similar vibe there. You can't control all the people in your family, but you do have the power to influence them. You should exert that power wisely. One of those ways is making sure that when it's their time, it's their time. Now, again, that doesn't mean every man who's not getting enough intimacy just needs to come home and do more dishes. It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that that's one element of it. I'm also saying, hey, if there's a problem, don't allow that problem to fester and become a new problem with the rest of your family. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to first recognize, I'm a man, and women would do this too, but I'm speaking to men. Recognize, I'm a man. I will deal with stressors, and those around me are depending on me to be a good leader. My son is depending on me to be a good dad, and he's not interested in, Daddy won't play with me. He won't take me out and go fishing. He won't help me with my homework because he's too stressed out because mommy won't give him none. He don't care about that, right? He doesn't care if I had a rough day at work because, those TPS reports were really getting to me, or those Excel sheets. Man, them formulas were rough on me today. Right? He doesn't care about that. He just cares like, hey, can we go out and play ball? Can we go bike riding? Can we whatever? And can we play Minecraft? It's usually Minecraft. Right? That's what he cares about. So I have to learn to compartmentalize. And it's a tough deal. That's what it means to be a family man. That's just the way it is. And there are so ways that you can blow off steam or decompress and be ready. That one of them is like maybe you sit down and you just kind of take some breaths and you just kind of allow yourself to think about it. And you're like, all right, I'm gonna leave everything at work because now I'm home. I got to deal with my family. Another way is maybe you come home and you're like, hey fam, give me 10 minutes. I'm going to go to my office and I'm going to sit there and maybe you play a video game. That's just you're playing a shoot 'em up game. You're like, all right, and everybody you shoot is your boss. I'm not telling you to be violent. I'm just saying like maybe that's how you blow off steam. Maybe you compartmentalize it for the day, and then you're like, Saturday, I'm going golfing. And golfing is your time to just decompress, get away from all of it. Okay? You have to figure out what works for you. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe you come home and you're like, family, I know it's 5 o'clock. I'm home. However, give me an hour. I need to go run. I need to go break a sweat. And I need to allow the muscles to just work their magic as I'm running and help me set aside all the cares of the day so that I can be the best husband and the best father for you. That's your job as a man. Period. So those are some ways you got to figure out what works for you. Again, I'm not saying if you come home and you go running that your wife is all of a sudden going to be more intimate. Not saying that. Just telling you from what I can read some of my perspective here. Another thing that caught my attention. He said, now I'm a better dad. I got some bad news for you, buddy. No, you are not. Here's the thing. Your children are watching more closely than you realize. They will pick up on things that you didn't realize they even understood or knew. Okay? They're learning from both of you what a marriage looks like. Now, your friends may not know that you have a sexless marriage, and early on, your kids probably won't either. And they might never know. But if you have a sexless marriage, there's a good chance that this is not the only impact on your marriage that's occurring. And so your kids are watching, and they will see certain behaviors, and they will pick up on it. And they will assume that those are normal behaviors. And perhaps those behaviors are a result of something else. They may or may not know about that something else. So they may not recognize this is a normal behavior, and I'm putting normal in quotations here. They may not recognize this is a normal behavior in the context of this situation. They're just going to see this behavior and think, well, that must be what a marriage is like. And so then they might grow up and learn that being snippy or whatever additional things are happening, they might learn that's normal behavior just to be normal, right? You follow what I'm saying here? Like they may not understand the context. They might. Like I don't know because I don't remember when I was a kid. Like I'm pretty sure I remember hearing some giggles from my mom and dad's bedroom once or twice. Yeah, I know. We're all like, when you're like 15, you're like, ugh, And I remember maybe a couple of jokes that kind of clued me in, like dad would make a joke. It's not appropriate. Then mom would be like, she'd give him that eye and she'd be like, the kids are around. and maybe she didn't say it, but that's what her eye was saying. That, she was like, the kids are here. You watch what you're saying in front of them. This is not appropriate. Right. And so you kind of pick, like as a kid, I picked up on, I'm like, I think something happened last night, right? So I think kids can kind of pick up on it. And so they can tell in some way, at least when they're older, when they're in their teens, right? So, no, you are not being a good dad. And here's the other thing. If your kids ever find out that you're cheating, then you will have just told them that this is acceptable behavior in a marriage. That's what you told them. Now, when you think about it, I do not want my son to grow up and think that cheating is acceptable, because I don't want him cheating on his future spouse, and I don't want his future spouse cheating on him. That's not a good relationship. I want to model the behavior as best as I can that I want him to think is acceptable and appropriate. We won't always get it right. Sometimes my wife and I have a little argument, and sometimes, and it's never really that big. It's usually kind of like 30 seconds, and then we get back to, we bring ourselves back to, a proper place, but, so will my son grow up thinking that, yeah, occasionally mom and dad butt heads? Yes. But but he will recognize that, hey, they resolve this pretty quickly and they don't get out of hand. Like, they don't swear at each other. They don't call each other names. They definitely don't put their hands on each other, right? Like, so so he will learn that, hey, arguments happen, but there are certain constraints around those arguments. And in our case, he will learn that the arguments don't happen that often. So his vision will be, okay, sometimes sometimes I will argue, and that's okay. And there's a proper way to do it. And, I'll talk to him as he gets older, and I'll be like, hey, son, whenever you're with a girl and you're arguing, here are some things that you should never, ever do. Never put your hands on her, because if you come home, somebody might put their hands on you, right? It's the way it is. Look, that's what I was taught. That's what he's going to be taught, right? So he'll learn some things, not only from my own words, but more importantly, from the way that I behave. So I just want to put that out there. Like, no, you are you are not being a good father, because there are things that you don't realize they're picking up on, that they're learning, and you're teaching them. So no, sorry. You might be mad at me and say, well, yeah, but he makes it look, I don't care what it looks like. Looks are deceiving, and kids are very good at picking up on things. The other thing that I noticed, he said, I stopped asking and she got nervous. Now, look, I don't want to get too deep into somebody else's marriage, especially when I'm only reading what they wrote and I have no opportunity to ask them further questions, nor am I hearing from the other side. But that just kind of sends a red flag to me. Like, if you stop asking, and then you recognize that your wife got nervous, and then now she's starting to initiate things, that kind of tells me that there's something else going on. Something is off about the relationship. I don't know if it's him, I don't know if it's her, but there's something that's off, right? Because that tells me, if your wife is giving you pity sex, and then you stop asking, and then she now starts initiating, that tells me that somewhere inside there is still a desire. Something is obstructing it. Don't know what it is. Maybe she's going through a thing. Maybe he's being a certain way. I don't know. This is why I say go get professional help, so that somebody can sit down with the both of you and start asking the right questions and get to the right answers, right? But this tells me, just reading this, I'm like, something's not right here. Like, because if she was truly okay with not having sexy time, then when you stop asking, she's not going to be bothered. She'll be like, oh, well, now I don't have to give him the pity sex. Cool. We good. Right? So, and from my perspective, I say it's your job as a husband to figure it out, or to help lead the family to figuring it out. Maybe you don't figure it out yourself. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, like, you don't have to be everything, but it's your job to lead the family, right? If you're struggling with your child becomes, the rebellious teenager, and they won't talk to you like they used to, and they don't want to come and sit and watch TV and whatever else, right? It's your job to dig in and figure it out and lead you guys to the place where you need to be. If your wife is suddenly acting in a way that's very different, it's your job to help dig in and help bring that to the surface, and then help bring it to resolution. That's your job. And yes, it is a very tough job. Sometimes people don't want to. Sometimes people are going through something and they don't know the full extent of what they're going through. Maybe they're going through something and they know they're going through something, but they're too embarrassed to bring it out. So you gotta work hard, and it's tough, right? I have no idea, and there could be. I could sit here and I could speculate for 2 hours on things that it could be. We're not going to, but I'm just saying, like, that's your job as husband. That's the role you signed up for. Here's what I like to tell people when it comes to being a husband and a father. I am responsible for the vibe in the house. All of it. We like to talk about, like, oh, men are in charge, blah, 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 and they're the patriarch, blah, blah. Yeah, we like some people like to think of it in terms of, like, I just say and everybody does. No, it's not how that works. The way it really works is you're responsible for leading the family. And if there's a breakdown somewhere in there, you're responsible for helping bring that to light and bringing it to a resolution. Maybe that means you go to some, counseling. Maybe that means you talk to somebody. It could mean any number of things. Maybe you just have repeated conversations, whatever. I don't know what it is. It varies. But that's your responsibility. That's what you are supposed to do as a man. That's the modeling, that behavior that you should be modeling for your child. So that when they grow up, if you have a son, and I think in this case the guy has a daughter, but if you have a son, then he learns, hey, marriage is a very serious thing. It's my job to lead it, not to dictate, to lead, and to be responsible for everybody else's emotions. And yes, that is a heavy burden. That's what you're signing up for, man. It's the way it is. Okay? And it's not to say that the women in your life, the wives out there have no responsibility. Maybe some, Liberty mom out there will create a podcast and she can talk about it, right? She can talk to the ladies from a woman's perspective. I'm talking from a man's perspective. And I'm saying, men, that's your responsibility. And half the nonsense you see, like especially on Twitter, half that nonsense about relationships, is garbage. Those are anonymous accounts. They're at best a playboy, at worst some dude that's living in his mom's basement. Or maybe not even a dude. Could be a woman just being a troll, whatever. Most of that advice is garbage. Okay? Your job is to be a leader. So you need to act like it. And you need to approach a marriage as if you are the leader, not the dictator, the leader. And it is a huge responsibility. And it's a lot of work. And I get it. You work hard at your job, wherever it is. Maybe you're a construction worker. Maybe you're an office worker. And then you come home and now you got a family. That's what you signed up for. So figure out what you need to do to be able to deliver in all of those areas. Every area that you're in, you're responsible for delivering. So deliver. All right. I don't want to end this on a bad note. I want to end this on a positive note. So let's look at this next one. What time are we at? Oh, we got plenty of time. We're good. Let's look at this next one. This is much more positive. It doesn't say, when you see the title, you're not going to think of it that way because it says, my husband made me cry tonight. And you're like, wait, what? How's that positive, DL? So here's what it says. Let me put this over on this screen here so I can better see what's going on. All right, so it says, my husband made me cry tonight. I was cooking our dinner, which I do every night because I love cooking, and I accidentally burned the pork burgers. I mean, come on. Who hasn't? I've burnt meals before. I'm the cook in the house, and I've burnt plenty of meals and ruined plenty of meals. Okay, there's been a few times where I'm like, all right, we're going out to eat because I screwed up and there's no time for it. So I didn't mean to. I'm going on here. I didn't mean to, but I got distracted trying to make the sides. I felt so defeated trying to open windows up to get some smoke out, and my husband walked in the kitchen and stared at me. I just looked at him like I don't know what to do. He walked over, kissed me on the forehead, and told me he appreciates me cooking dinner for him every night. He told me we can scrape the burned part off, no harm, no foul. And he was so excited that I made that to eat the dinner that I made. I burst into tears. He's the most loving, caring, and kind human I know. And the little things like tonight just make me so happy to have him. I grew up with a mom that blew up about everything. So I'm laughing because my mom was a bit of a hothead. love her to death, but we got to be real about who people are. A great woman, don't get me wrong. I grew up with a mom that blew up about everything, and my husband heals that part of me that feels like I can't do anything right. He's truly my favorite person. That's all. Nothing major, but wanted to get it out there. Uh, th- Let me ask you, just on the heels of the previous one, you think that's a sexless marriage? Bet not. And why? Because that man is demonstrating exactly what it means to be a leader. You walk in, you recognize, man, my wife cooks dinner every night. She works hard to make a good, tasty meal. And tonight she screwed it all up. But I'm not going to focus on the screw up. I'm going to focus on, man, you're an awesome wife. And I'm going to tell you. And then we're going to eat this together, and I'm going to enjoy it, even if I have to fake it. Right? Because there's probably going to be that time where the wife isn't interested and she fakes it a little bit. That happens. Okay? Let's be honest. We're having frank conversation here. Okay? That's the kind of leadership you show. And that's when it matters. Right? When it's something that seems trivial. I mean, come on. You burned the burgers because you were focusing on the sides. That's not that big of a deal. It was to her. And more important than saying this particular meal is no big deal, more important was to say, I really appreciate the work that you do. The work that you do day in and day out makes this particular thing no big deal. Who cares? That's being a good leader. And I would put money on, I don't like gambling, but I would put money on it. If we could find that person, and presuming it was a true story, like you never know with the internet, but presuming it's a true story, I would put money on it. That marriage is not at all sexless. Probably quite, in fact, pretty sure that guy got lucky that night. I'm just saying, probably happened. That's the kind of leadership you need to be, man, that you need to have, okay? That's what you need to focus. And it's not about telling people they did good and all these things. It's about reading the room. He walked in, he read the room. Wife is upset. She's frustrated. She wanted, who knows? Maybe this was a new recipe. Maybe she was excited about, this new dinner because sometimes I do that. Sometimes my wife walks in, I'm like, man, I can't. And then I'm like, how's it taste? Because it's like a new recipe I'm trying out. So I totally get it. Now I don't burst into tears. I'm a little different. I have to try not to swear and throw things across the room. Okay, not really. But I express things in anger more than tears. So if I ruin the burgers, I'm going to be kind of pissy because I ruined the burgers, And my wife does the same to me. Like she's done that. She's come in, see that I'm working hard, and then just express this appreciation, which makes me feel good inside. And it makes me want to do things for her. Makes me want to, deal with her tough schedule when she's having one. Makes me want to, go fight on her side, which has happened before. In fact, I'll tell you a story and then we'll close the show out with some comments. Let me tell you a story about that's kind of similar. Years ago, my wife, she's a real estate agent, and she made a mistake, and she got turned. She wasn't a real estate agent at the time, and she was trying to. I'm not going to try to get into the details, but she was trying to help somebody kind of sell a property, and there's a way that you can do it where you're not engaging in realtor behavior, but it's kind of a fine line, and you can easily cross over it to where the government's like, yeah, you were behaving like a realtor. Okay. And she was trying to do that. She didn't have a real estate license, and somebody turned her in, and she ended up getting fined like several $1,000s. And she was pretty upset about that. So we got a lawyer, and I dug in. I'm reading, and I'm communicating with the lawyer, and I'm on her side. I'm like trying to figure out, like, all right, what's the angle that we can get out of getting fined here? Because at the end of the day, there was no real crime because the people that we were working with were quite happy with what she was doing, or not we, but the person that she was working with was fine with what she was up to. And she made an honest mistake, and she wasn't misleading anybody. There was none of that, right? There was no victim here of any kind. The government can't be a victim. And so I'm looking for some angle to get out, and we couldn't find one. I was like, you made a mistake. So here's what I said to her. I said, well, guess we don't do that again. Right? And I did say we at that time. So we won't do that again. I had nothing to do with it. Okay? But I said we, because we're a team. We win together, we lose together. Right? Now, I don't take her wins from her, but I just, like, the way that I look at it is like, hey, I'm going to give you a high five if you do well. If you make a mistake, we're in this together. That's my approach. And so I stood by her side. I didn't give her any grief at all. Not a single bit. Didn't you know you shouldn't do this? Nothing. I just said, I guess we won't do that again. And here's what she said later. She said, DL, after it was all said and done, she's like, I just want to thank you for being by my side and not giving me any grief over this. When I said, hey, people make mistakes. It's a learning experience, right? It's like on the job learning. It's training. We paid $3,000 to learn something new. Right? Like, yeah. And that happens because if you run a business and you do it long enough and it grows big enough, you will make a mistake somewhere. It's going to happen. And so I stood by her side. That's the kind of thing that you need to do, right? That's the kind of behavior that you as a man need to engage in. Stand by their side. And if they make a mistake, there might be a time where you sit down and say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. But more often than not, I think the better answer is just to be on their side and fight for them because, if they know they've done wrong, they know they've done wrong, and they're already going to be embarrassed. They're already going to have to deal with the consequences. So be there and be on their side. Be home team. Win together, lose together. Right? There's no reason to be like, well, you should have done that. I mean, sometimes with your kid, maybe that's an appropriate conversation. Like, if he pulls the dog's tail too hard and she turns around and snips at him, it might be like, well, guess you shouldn't do that, huh? You know what I mean? Like, there's a time and a place for it, but that's part of being a leader, right? Figuring out when is that time. Read the room. All right, let's get into some comments here, and then we'll end the show. Let's see what you got here. Let's see. Oh, okay. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Turn it down. I see that Keith says, too much rock and roll or background noise. Okay, so I'll keep it down a little bit. Good feedback there, folks. And yes, that Liberty lady is right. This is a top secret thing that I do. Oh, you know what? I'm going to get the live chat here. Yes, so he keeps the music there so we can see where the comments are and easily go there and cut them out for the audio. So when I go edit the audio, what happens is this audio that gets saved, it's saved on different tracks. And then the track for the music only has the music, so I can just scroll and say, here's the music. That's where I have the comments. And then I cut those out for the audio version only. It's a top secret trick. So if you're going to be podcasting, now you know. Let's see what else we got in here. Yeah, the commercial was super loud. You know what? I'm gonna spend some time this weekend working on the audio levels, and then I will try to adjust all the audio levels for all the commercials so that it doesn't feel like television, where you're listening and you're watching your show, and then all of a sudden the commercial comes on. It's like blah, and you're like, what the heck? Yeah, I'll try not to do that. So I'll work on that. Let's see what else we got in here. Yes. See what I mean, folks? About standing on my neck? DL also is his producer of a closing video this weekend. Yes, I have to do a closing video. Let's see. And I say that positively, guys. I'm not talking trash about my peeps. Let's see. That's a good point. The wife being nervous around that man, she probably secretly knows by now what he's doing on the side. She might. And that's not healthy for the relationship, right? If it's an open relationship, at least they're consenting. I think that's a bad idea personally. I would never have an open relationship. And if your relationship was a closed relationship, and then all of a sudden, like your spouse, whichever side it might be, your spouse is like, I think we should have an open relationship. The general rule of thumb is you now have an open relationship. You're just finding out. Just saying, don't shoot the messenger. Let's see. What else we got? Let's see. I think that's it. Yes. It's a good final comment to end on. The ones who will walk with you through hell are the ones you hang on to. Anyone can be there for the good times. 100% true. Absolutely. Those are the people that you want to care about. All right, folks, thank you for joining me this morning. I really enjoyed having this conversation. Remember, Mondays, that's going to be my bill review. I haven't even looked to see what bill I'm going to review, but we're going to dig into it and see what there is out there. I feel like politicians out there, I feel like they've got something for me to look at, so we'll dig into it. Make sure that you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. You can use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at the checkout to score a 10% discount, or just hit the referral link in the show notes. Make it that much easier. Before you head out, remember, I am not just a voice on the mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver you the best libertarian content. I want you to connect with me on Linktree. That link is also in the show notes. You can find my Patreon there or my Buy Me a Coffee. Those links are there. Go there. Every bit that you can donate helps this show keep rolling. Plus, you can find my other platforms and stay in the loop with me. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, and on Fridays, Dad Talk, will be seen by more people. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Look forward to seeing you on Monday. With that, I'm going to head on out, and I will see you. Have a great weekend.